You're watching the legal breakdown. So, Glenn, we've got another major blow to Trump in his fraud case. This one totally unexpected. So, talk about what Judge Engoron just did to Trump.
Yeah, so Judge Engoron just put some additional restrictions on Donald Trump. Remember, he had appointed a retired judge named Barbara Jones to be a monitor over all of Trump's financial endeavors. Why? To prevent him from moving assets around, hiding assets to try to avoid those assets ultimately being used or being seized by New York Attorney General Tish James to satisfy what everybody expected would be a massive money judgment against Donald Trump. Well, now we know there is a massive money judgment against Trump. And, Trump is scrambling because he obviously doesn't have the liquid assets to be able to perfect his right to appeal. You've got to put the whole $500 million up, either in cash, liquid assets, or you have to convince somebody to issue a bond, guarantee, ensure that you will pay out if you lose the appeal. Well, he's coming up dry. He doesn't have the liquid assets, and he doesn't have anybody who will step up and vouch for him. Can you imagine being the insurance company who says, no, 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 I assure you, Donald Trump is good for $500 million in the event he loses the appeal? Yeah, I can't envision an insurance company doing that. Now, he did persuade one insurance company, the Chubb Group, to put up a $93 million bond. But the reporting is even they backed out when he started asking them, can you spot me another $500 million? Well, Chubb Group ran in the other direction. So
Yeah.
right now, Donald Trump's financial world is imploding. And Judge Engoron does not want to run the risk of Donald Trump playing games with his assets at this point. So what he did is he took the monitorship that he'd put in place, that Barbara Jones, retired a federal court judge, was appointed the monitor, and he basically put some enhanced supervision over all of Trump's financials to, and I'm looking at Judge Engoron's new court order, to guard against dissipation or transfer of the assets. There will be enhanced oversight that Barbara Jones can conduct to make sure Donald Trump doesn't play any games with his assets.
Well, what spurred this decision by Engoron? Like, why was it suddenly necessary for this enhanced babysitting, basically?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't absorbed all of Judge Engoron's new order, and it's a little bit dense. But it looks like, we are now in the find out phase. That's where Donald Trump is firmly encamped. He messed around and he's now finding out. So his
Yeah.
incentive, his motive is high to play games with his assets if he's going to play games and try to hide some of them or avoid some of them being attached or having liens placed on them or having them seized. So, it's not unlike when somebody is sentenced. Let me jump into the criminal system for a minute. When somebody is sentenced to a prison term, one of the big questions that a judge has to contend with is, do I order that person to begin serving his sentence the minute he is found guilty, or do I put him on release, let him get his affairs in order, which I will tell you parenthetically is something we tend to do only for the rich and the influential and the connected and the powerful, often the white males. We let them get their fair affairs in order, but others go straight into prison after a jury has found them guilty. Yes, I have a beef with the unequal application of justice there. But the judge has to make a decision because now the stakes are high. Why? Because somebody knows they're headed to prison. So does the judge put them on release pending sentencing and then order them to prison? Or might they be inspired to run to avoid a jail term? The same holds true when there's a massive money judgment. Now, the stakes couldn't be higher. Donald Trump's financial
Right.
world is circling the drain. And the judge is like, listen, I'm putting some enhanced, monitor abilities in the hands of Barbara Jones to make sure Donald Trump doesn't play any games.
Glenn, who's paying for Barbara Jones?
Donald Trump. I think the judge made that clear. All of the costs associated with this monitorship come out of Trump funds, and that is as it should be, right? He is the one who engaged in massive systemic business fraud over many years. He should have to foot the bill to, be in a position to make the people of New York whole by having this money judgment satisfied.
When this fraud ruling was initially handed down, the Barbara Jones monitorship, was reportedly the thing that pissed Trump off the most. Why is that? Like, what could Trump do without this oversight? Why was he so upset over this?
Yeah, I think it's because it would have been much easier for him to start to offload some of his assets, put things in the name of others, transfer things, maybe hide things overseas in some shell corporations or
suddenly Barron Trump becomes the new CEO of the Trump org.
Yeah. So and I'm also going to just take a flyer at this, that he probably didn't like his financial world being overseen by, I don't know, a woman.
Yeah. Well, what does it say about Trump's business that the judge found that he needed this type of babysitting?
Yeah, it says that Donald Trump can't be trusted. He's not a man of honor, and there's gambling in Las Vegas, in case anybody wasn't sufficiently shocked by that assessment.
Yeah.
But, this is necessary to make sure all of the hard work of Tish James and her team representing the interests of the people of New York, aren't for naught, because Donald Trump has gotten rid of all of his assets, and he's basically judgment proof. But, I know we're going to talk about some other things that Tish James has already done to make sure that doesn't happen.
Well, to that point, what is the status of Donald Trump's ability to even be able to pay this $500 million? Because, he's had success at finding, to your earlier point, the Chubb Group, who was willing to cover him on the $93 million for the E. Jean Carroll judgment. But where's he at with this $500 million for the New York fraud judgment?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I actually feel like Donald Trump does have the ability, if he wanted to borrow against whatever equity he has in his, Westchester County estate, in his third-rate resort down in Florida, Mar-a-Lago, his Westminster, New Jersey golf club, his overseas golf clubs, Trump Tower, 40 Wall Street. I have to believe that even though those all may be leveraged to the hilt, there may be all kinds of mortgages, he may owe massive debts on all of those properties. There has to be enough in there in equity, you would think, for him to actually borrow against it legitimately. And yet it feels like he has been unwilling to do it. I really think the tipping point, Brian, was when he authorized his lawyers just a few days ago to file what was probably the world's most embarrassing court filing Donald Trump has ever had to suffer, saying, I can't get a bond. I don't have the assets, even though, trust me, I'm a billionaire 14 times over, as I keep telling everybody. I cannot make good on the amount I need to deposit to file an appeal in this case. So I think that had to be really galling for Donald Trump. But that was the first moment when I tended to believe he's not going to make a bond. He is not going to be able to perfect his right to appeal without having to pay out, or without Tish James beginning to seize his stuff. And we have brand new reporting from the Daily Beast that Tish James has already filed the judgment in the Westchester County court system. What that does is it places a lien against a property of some consequence called the Seven Springs Mansion and Estate, 212 acres with this massive mansion. I'm sure it's very tastefully decorated, that Tish James now has a lien on, and that looks like one of the properties she will seize in order to begin to force him to satisfy the money judgment that's been entered against him. So she's wasting no time. She's protecting her interests and the interests of the people of New York. And, Donald Trump's financial world is crumbling.
Well, if there are any buyers out there who are interested in an estate with a gold toilet, I hear that the seller is very motivated, so they can jump in now. Glenn and I, of course, will be doing a deep dive on exactly this issue in the next Legal Breakdown episode that comes out. So for those watching right now, if you want to be able to follow along with that one, make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching the Legal Breakdown.